The hallways of Lincoln High buzzed with students moving between classes. Among them was Maya Johnson, a quiet but confident black girl who had just transferred to the school. She kept to herself, focusing on her books, trying to ignore the curious stares and hushed whispers. As Maya walked toward her locker, she felt a presence behind her. Before she could turn, a sharp shove sent her books crashing to the floor. Laughter erupted from a group of students. Standing in front of her was Brittany Harper, the school's notorious bully. Blonde, tall, and always surrounded by a group of mean-spirited friends, Brittany ruled the hallways like a queen bee. "Watch where you're going, newbie," Brittany sneered, crossing her arms. "Or better yet, maybe you should just turn around and go back to wherever you came from." Maya took a deep breath, her heart pounding. She refused to let them see her shaken. Calmly, she bent down to pick up her books, but Brittany wasn't done. She kicked Maya's notebook down the hall. "Oops," she smirked. "Did I do that?" The laughter around them grew louder. Other students watched but said nothing. No one dared to stand up to Brittany. Maya clenched her jaw but didn't respond. Instead, she picked up her notebook, locked eyes with Brittany, and said firmly, "You'll regret this." Brittany and her friends burst into laughter again. "Oh, I'm shaking," she mocked. "What are you gonna do? Tell your daddy?" Maya didn't answer. She just smiled, a knowing, almost amused smile, before walking away. If only Brittany knew who her father was. The moment Maya walked away, the hallway remained tense. Some students exchanged uneasy glances, sensing that something about her reaction wasn't quite right. Most kids who faced Brittany either fought back or broke down, but Maya had done neither. Instead, she had smiled. Brittany scoffed. "She's just another nobody," she muttered, flipping her hair. "She'll learn her place soon enough." But as the school day went on, small whispers began circulating. "Did you hear? That new girl, Maya, she's the daughter of some big-shot cop. Not just a cop. The new chief of police." The rumor spread like wildfire, reaching even the teachers, some of whom suddenly seemed more attentive whenever Maya was around. By lunchtime, Brittany had also heard the news. Sitting in her usual spot with her followers, she rolled her eyes. So what? Her daddy being a cop doesn't mean anything. It's not like he's gonna come running to help her. One of her friends, a girl named Ashley, shifted uncomfortably. "But Chief Johnson? My dad mentioned him the other day. He said he's strict, doesn't tolerate any nonsense." Brittany waved her off. "Please. Cops don't scare me." But deep inside, something about Maya's confidence gnawed at her. It wasn't just the way she had stood her ground, it was the way she had looked at her, as if she already knew how this would end. Meanwhile, across the cafeteria, Maya sat alone, quietly eating her lunch. She didn't need to start trouble, she knew that trouble would come to Brittany soon enough. By the time school ended, the rumor had reached every corner of the building. Maya's father wasn't just a cop. He was the chief. Even some teachers exchanged nervous glances as they watched Maya walk through the halls. They had seen officers come and go over the years, but a police chief's daughter? That changed things. Brittany, however, refused to be intimidated. "She thinks she's special just because of her dad," she scoffed as she stood by her locker, her friends huddled around. "That doesn't change anything. This is my school. I run things here." Ashley, her closest friend, hesitated. "Britt, maybe we should back off. You heard what people are saying. Chief Johnson doesn't mess around." Brittany rolled her eyes. "And? He's not going to do anything. What, arrest a bunch of high schoolers?" She laughed. "Please." But Ashley wasn't convinced. The way Maya had stood up to Brittany earlier had been different. She wasn't scared, and that worried her. As Brittany slammed her locker shut, she smirked. "Watch. Tomorrow, I'm going to show her exactly how things work around here." Meanwhile, Maya walked toward the front entrance of the school, slipping her phone out of her pocket. A message from her dad flashed on the screen. "Chief Johnson, hey sweetheart, "How was your first day?" Maya hesitated before typing back, "Interesting." She glanced over her shoulder, her eyes locking onto Brittany, who was still laughing with her friends. Maya already knew what was coming, and she also knew that Brittany had no idea what she was walking into. The next morning, Maya walked into school with her head held high. She knew Brittany wasn't done. Bullies like her never stopped until they were forced to. As she walked to her locker, a few students whispered. Some had heard about her father. Others were waiting to see what Brittany would do next. Maya was placing her books inside when she heard the familiar voice behind her. Well, if it isn't the chief's little princess. Maya turned around, unfazed. Brittany stood with her arms crossed, her usual smug look on her face. "What do you want, Brittany?" Maya asked, shutting her locker. Brittany smirked. "Oh, nothing. Just wondering if you're gonna cry to Daddy when things get a little rough around here." Maya clenched her jaw but refused to take the bait. "I don't need my dad to handle my problems." Brittany laughed. "Oh, really? We'll see about that." The warning sent a chill down Maya's spine. But she wouldn't give Brittany the satisfaction of seeing her nervous. At lunchtime, Maya grabbed her tray and walked towards an empty table. Just as she was about to sit down, she felt something cold and wet spill all over her back. Gasps echoed across the cafeteria. Maya froze. Slowly, she turned her head to see Brittany standing behind her, an empty milk carton in her hand. "Oops," Brittany said, grinning. "Looks like someone had an accident." Laughter erupted from Brittany's group, but the rest of the cafeteria stayed silent, waiting to see what would happen next. Maya took a deep breath. She wasn't going to cry. She wasn't going to run. Instead, she pulled out her phone and sent a single message. "To Dad, you need to come to the school." Now, Brittany had no idea the storm she had just unleashed. Maya sat still, her clothes soaked with milk, but her expression remained calm. She knew Brittany was expecting her to cry, to storm out, or to make a scene. Instead, she did something unexpected. She smiled. Brittany's grin faltered for a second. "What's so funny?" she snapped. Maya simply shrugged. "You'll see." The cafeteria doors suddenly swung open. A strong presence filled the room as Chief Daniel Carter stepped in, his uniform crisp, his badge gleaming. The moment his boots hit the cafeteria floor, the energy shifted. Students whispered, some even gasped. A few teachers hurried toward him. "Chief Carter? What brings you here?" one of them asked nervously. "I'm here for my daughter," he said, his voice steady but full of authority. Maya stood up, her back straight. Brittany and her group turned pale. They weren't expecting this. The principal arrived, his face red. "Chief Carter, there's no need." Chief Carter held up a hand. "Actually, there is." His sharp eyes landed on Brittany. Brittany looked around, desperate for an escape. I didn't do anything." "Oh? Then why is my daughter covered in milk?" Chief Carter asked, his voice like steel. The cafeteria was dead silent. Brittany's confidence crumbled. "It was just a joke," she muttered. Chief Carter didn't move. "Bullying isn't a joke. And I don't tolerate people who pick on others because they think they can get away with it." Brittany gulped. The weight of her actions hit her all at once. The principal looked at Maya. "I'm so sorry this happened. Brittany will be dealt with." Maya finally spoke, her voice calm but firm. "I don't want apologies. I want change." Chief Carter nodded in approval. This wasn't just about Maya anymore, this was about making sure it never happened again. Brittany had no idea what was coming next. The cafeteria remained silent as Chief Carter's piercing gaze remained fixed on Brittany. The weight of his presence was undeniable. Every student, every teacher, even the principal, stood still, waiting for what would happen next. Brittany shifted uncomfortably, her usual smug confidence completely shattered. It was just a prank," she stammered. "I swear, I didn't mean any harm." Chief Carter tilted his head slightly, his expression unreadable. "Is that what you tell yourself to sleep at night?" he asked, his voice calm but firm. Maya watched her father with admiration. He wasn't yelling. He wasn't making a scene. But his authority filled the entire room. The principal cleared his throat, nervously adjusting his tie. Chief Carter, rest assured, we take bullying very seriously. Brittany will face the proper disciplinary actions. Chief Carter's eyes didn't leave Brittany. And what exactly does that mean? The principal hesitated. Well, we have protocols. A warning, perhaps detention. Maya sighed. She had heard this before, empty promises, no real change. Chief Carter folded his arms. A warning? You think a warning will stop this from happening again? His voice was sharper now. Brittany's father, Mr. Caldwell, suddenly stepped forward from the crowd. He was a well-dressed man with a stiff posture, trying to appear in control. Chief Carter, let's not blow this out of proportion. Kids make mistakes. My daughter was just, Chief Carter cut him off with a look. Your daughter humiliated mine in front of an entire cafeteria. She didn't make a mistake. She made a choice. The tension in the room grew thick. Mr. Caldwell clenched his jaw. I'm sure we can handle this in a civilized manner. You don't need to turn this into a spectacle. Chief Carter stepped forward, closing the distance between them. The only spectacle here is that your daughter thinks she can treat people however she wants and face no consequences. That ends today. Brittany gripped the edge of the lunch table, her knuckles white. She had never seen someone stand up to her like this. Then, to her horror, Chief Carter turned to the principal. I want a full report of this incident sent to the school board. And I want to know what actions will be taken to make sure this doesn't happen again, not just to Maya, but to anyone. The principal nodded quickly. Oh, of course, Chief Carter. I'll arrange a meeting immediately. Chief Carter looked back at Brittany. Your actions have consequences. Start getting used to it. Brittany's face burned red, but for the first time in her life, she had nothing to say, and this was just the beginning. By the time the school day ended, the entire student body was buzzing about what had happened in the cafeteria. Brittany Caldwell, the school's queen bee, the untouchable bully, had been publicly confronted by the new police chief. For the first time in her life, she wasn't in control. As Maya walked to her locker, students whispered around her. Some murmured words of support, while others simply stared, unsure of how to react. Brittany had ruled the school through fear for years, but now, that power was slipping Maya's side. She didn't want to be the center of attention. She just wanted to get through the school day without being harassed. Just as she reached her locker, her friend, Jasmine, rushed up beside her. Maya, do you have any idea how crazy today was? Maya gave her a tired smile. Yeah, I think I have an idea. Jasmine shook her head in amazement. I mean, your dad shut Brittany down in front of everyone. People are actually scared of her now. She's been hiding in the bathroom for the last hour. Maya raised an eyebrow. Really? Jasmine nodded. And get this, her dad was seen arguing with the principal in his office. People are saying he's trying to get your dad in trouble for embarrassing Brittany. Maya's stomach tightened. Of course he was. Before she could respond, a sharp voice cut through the hallway. Enjoying the attention? Maya turned to see Brittany standing a few feet away, her eyes filled with fury. Her usual smug smirk was gone, replaced by something more dangerous, humiliation. Maya exhaled, preparing for another round of insults. Brittany, just drop it. Brittany took a step closer, her voice low and venomous. You think this is over? My dad is a powerful man. He's not going to let this go. Maya refused to be intimidated. Neither is mine. Brittany's expression darkened. You think you've won? You haven't. This school is mine. People might be talking now, but give it a few days. They'll forget. They always do. Maya shook her head. She wasn't afraid anymore. Maybe they will. But I won't. Brittany clenched her fists, but for the first time, she had no comeback. Instead, she turned on her heel and stormed off down the hallway. Jasmine exhaled. Wow. That was intense. Maya shut her locker. She had a feeling this wasn't over. But for the first time, she didn't feel alone. She had her father, and Brittany was finally realizing she wasn't untouchable anymore. That evening, Chief Daniel Carter sat in his office, reviewing reports, when his phone buzzed. He glanced at the caller ID, Principal Hargrove. With a sigh, he answered. Chief Carter speaking. The principal's voice was tense. Chief, we need to talk. I just had a very unpleasant meeting with Mr. Caldwell. Daniel leaned back in his chair. Let me guess, he's demanding that I apologize for calling out his daughter? Principal Hargrove hesitated. It's worse than that. He's threatening legal action against the school, claiming that Brittany was humiliated and unfairly targeted by law enforcement. Daniel chuckled dryly. Unfairly targeted? She assaulted my daughter. The principal sighed. Look, I know that, and frankly, I think the whole school knows that. But Mr. Caldwell is a major donor. He's hinting that he'll pull funding unless something is done about this. Daniel's jaw tightened. This was classic abuse of power. The Caldwells weren't used to being held accountable, and now they were trying to strong-arm the system. So, what exactly is he asking for? Daniel asked on a heavy pause. He wants you removed as police chief. Daniel let out a slow breath. That's not going to happen. I figured you'd say that, Hargrove admitted. I don't agree with him, Chief, but he's pulling every string he can. He has friends on the school board. If he can't get you fired, he might push to have Maya expelled instead. Daniel's grip on his phone tightened. Expel Maya? For what? Defending herself? His voice was like steel. That man has no idea who he's messing with. Meanwhile, across town, Brittany Caldwell sat in her father's grand office, arms crossed. Dad, I don't care what you have to do, but I want Maya gone. Her father, Richard Caldwell, was already making calls. Don't worry, sweetheart. By tomorrow morning, this will all be taken care of. Brittany smirked. Maya and her father had embarrassed the wrong family, but what Brittany didn't realize was that Daniel Carter wasn't a man who backed down, and this fight was just getting started. The next morning, Chief Daniel Carter arrived at the school, his presence commanding and unshaken. He wasn't here to plead, he was here to ensure justice was served. As he walked into the principal's office, he found Richard Caldwell already seated, his face smug. Brittany sat beside him, looking equally pleased with herself. Principal Hargrove shifted uncomfortably. Chief Carter, Mr. Caldwell has some concerns he'd like to discuss. Richard leaned forward, his voice dripping with arrogance. I think we can all agree that this has gotten out of hand. My daughter was publicly humiliated, and now my family is being unfairly targeted. I'm here to settle this before things escalate further. Daniel crossed his arms. Settle this? Your daughter assaulted my child. And now, instead of holding her accountable, you're using your influence to cover it up? Richard chuckled. It's called protecting my own, Chief. You should try it sometime. Daniel's jaw clenched, but his voice remained measured. Protecting? No. You're teaching your daughter that she can hurt others without consequences. And now you want Maya expelled for defending herself? Richard's smile didn't waver. Expulsion is just one option. But if you step down as police chief and issue a public apology, maybe we can reconsider. A tense silence filled the room, then, Daniel leaned in, lowering his voice, let me be very clear. I don't negotiate with bullies, whether they're in high school or wearing suits. Richard's smirk faltered, if you try to force Maya out, I will launch an official investigation into Brittany's behavior, not just this incident, but all the past ones. Because from what I hear, this isn't the first time she's bullied someone. Brittany's face paled. What? Richard scoffed. You have no proof. Daniel pulled out a folder from his jacket. Actually, I do. Several students have already come forward with statements. You didn't just pick on the wrong girl, you picked on the wrong family. Principal Hargrove straightened. If Chief Carter proceeds with this, the school board will have no choice but to act. Richard Caldwell's confidence wavered. His carefully constructed power was slipping, and he knew it. Daniel stood. You wanted to settle this? Fine. Here's my settlement. Brittany apologizes to my daughter, and she faces the same punishment any other student would. Or, I take this further, and we expose everything. A tense silence filled the room. For the first time, Richard Caldwell realized he wasn't the one in control. Richard Caldwell's smug expression was gone, replaced with a nervous tension that flickered across his face. Brittany looked at her father, panic settling in her eyes. She had never seen him look unsure before. Principal Hargrove cleared his throat. Mr. Caldwell, I think we need to consider what's best for everyone involved. Richard's jaw clenched. He had always been the one pulling the strings, making the rules, ensuring that people fell in line. But now, sitting across from Chief Daniel Carter, a man who wasn't afraid of him, he realized that his influence might not be enough this time. This is ridiculous, Richard muttered, shifting uncomfortably. You think you can threaten me? Daniel remained calm, his voice firm. Not a threat. A fact. I have statements from students, and if you push this any further, I'll make sure an official investigation is opened. Do you really want the school board and the media looking into Brittany's history? Brittany gasped. Dad, you have to fix this. I can't be suspended. Everyone will talk about it. Daniel watched as Richard ran a hand through his hair, weighing his options. The man was used to getting his way, but this time, he had pushed too far. Finally, Richard exhaled sharply and leaned back in his chair. What do you want? Daniel didn't hesitate. An apology. A real one. Brittany owns up to what she did, and she faces the consequences like any other student. Brittany's face twisted in anger. I'm not apologizing to her. She embarrassed me. Enough. Richard's voice was low, sharp. Brittany flinched. You're going to apologize, Brittany. She stared at him in disbelief. But, you heard me. For the first time, Brittany saw a look in her father's eyes that unsettled her, not just frustration, but fear. He knew Daniel wasn't bluffing. Principal Hargrove nodded. Then it's settled. Brittany will apologize, and she will serve a week's suspension. Brittany's fists clenched, but she didn't argue. The reality of the situation was sinking in. She wasn't untouchable anymore. Daniel stood. Good. I expect the apology by the end of the day. As he turned to leave, Richard called out. Carter, this isn't over. Daniel looked over his shoulder, his expression unreadable. You're right. It's just beginning. Brittany and Richard sat in silence as Daniel walked out, leaving them to face the consequences of their actions for the first time in their lives. Brittany sat in silence, staring at the floor. The reality of her situation hit harder than she expected. Suspension? An apology? In front of everyone? It was unthinkable. Her father always fixed things. But this time, he couldn't. Richard Caldwell's jaw tightened as he watched his daughter. He was used to pulling strings, making problems disappear. But Chief Carter had outmaneuvered him. Brittany, we have to get ahead of this, Richard said. You'll apologize to Maya. That's the only way to make this go away quietly. Brittany's hands clenched into fists. I can't believe you're taking their side, she snapped. Richard exhaled, pinching the bridge of his nose. I'm not. I'm protecting you. This chief isn't just another cop, Brittany. He's got power, and if we don't handle this right, it could follow you forever. Brittany swallowed hard. She wasn't used to consequences. Later that afternoon, word spread quickly that Brittany was being forced to apologize. Students whispered in the halls, some in shock, others in satisfaction. Maya, sitting at her desk, was still wary. She had been through too much to expect fairness. People like Brittany didn't just change overnight. Then, the door opened. Brittany entered, her usual confidence replaced by hesitation. The teacher paused, allowing her to speak. Brittany glanced at Maya, then at the watching eyes of the class. She had never felt this exposed before. She started, but the words caught in her throat. The teacher raised an eyebrow. Go on. Brittany took a deep breath. She had no choice. I want to apologize, she muttered. The class went silent. Maya stared at her. For what? Brittany swallowed. She knew this was the moment she couldn't escape, for pushing you, for calling you names, for everything. She exhaled sharply, her pride crumbling. I was wrong. Gasps filled the room. Maya blinked, unsure how to react. For the first time in her life, Brittany Caldwell wasn't the one in control. The classroom remained silent, all eyes locked on Brittany. No one had ever seen her like this, vulnerable, unsure. Maya studied her carefully. She had spent years enduring taunts, whispers, and outright harassment. Hearing an apology was something she never expected. Okay, Maya said finally. But words don't erase what you did. Brittany's face turned red, but she nodded. For the first time, she understood that some things couldn't just be fixed with an apology. The teacher cleared her throat. Thank you, Brittany. I hope this is a turning point for you. She turned to the rest of the class. Let this be a reminder that actions have consequences. And respect is something everyone deserves. Brittany quickly walked back to her seat, avoiding everyone's stares. She had spent years at the top, untouchable. Now, she felt small. Maya, meanwhile, felt something unfamiliar, relief. Not because Brittany apologized, but because for once, the system had worked in her favor. Later that evening, Chief Carter sat across from Maya at the dinner table, watching her carefully. So, how was today? Maya smirked. Interesting. Her father chuckled. I heard about the apology. Maya nodded. Yeah. It happened. But I don't think Brittany's changing overnight. Chief Carter leaned forward. Maybe not. But today, she learned that she's not above consequences. And more importantly, you learn that standing up for yourself makes a difference. Maya thought about that. For so long, she had just accepted that bullies like Brittany would always get away with it. But today proved otherwise. The next day at school, Maya walked into the hallway, feeling different. Stronger. The same students who once ignored her now acknowledged her. She wasn't invisible anymore. Brittany, standing near her locker, caught her eye. For a moment, they just looked at each other. Then, Brittany turned away, not with her usual smugness, but with something else. Maybe regret. Maybe shame. Maya didn't care. She had one. Not by fighting, not by stooping to Brittany's level, but by standing firm, and for the first time in a long time, she felt truly free. If you enjoyed this story, don't forget to like, share, and comment your thoughts below. What would you have done in Maya's situation? Subscribe for more powerful stories about justice, courage, and standing up for what's right. Turn on notifications so you never miss our next inspiring video.